All right, so hopefully you gave this question a good go. Let's now zoom in and do it together. Zoom, 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 zooming right in, and we're giving it a go together. So we're being told that if cos of x equals cos of pi on 6, and x is between 3 pi on 2 and 2 pi, we need to find the values of x. Before we even approach this question, let's draw ourselves a unit circle. Now that we have ourselves a unit circle, let's really try to ask ourselves what this question is asking of us. It's saying that cos of a certain angle is going to be equal to positive cos, remember there's a positive in front of here, of pi on 6. So what we're going to ask ourselves is, for which quadrant is cos going to be positive? And obviously we know it's going to be positive in my first quadrant, where I simply have an angle, theta, and it's also going to be positive. Cos is also going to be positive in my fourth quadrant. And we know that the general angle for my fourth quadrant is 2 pi minus theta. We know that because to go right around my unit circle is 2 pi. So obviously 2 pi minus a bit of an angle is going to bring us to our fourth quadrant. And this is where cos is positive. We know that cos corresponds to my x values. So it makes sense that it's positive here and here on the right-hand side of my y-axis. Here and here is where cos is positive because this is where my x's are positive. Perfect. Next, let's look at our domain. Our domain is saying that x exists between 3 pi over 2 and 2 pi. So here is 3 pi over 2 right here, and 2 pi I've already labeled. So it's telling us that our angle is going to exist between here and here, which excludes this angle right here. Of course, if it was to be my first quadrant, it would be pi on 6. It would be cos of pi on 6 equals cos of pi on 6. And what a boring statement that is. So they're limiting us to our fourth quadrant in order to find what our angle is going to be. So we know that x, this x right here, is going to be 2 pi minus theta. So let me write out that x is going to be equal to 2 pi minus an angle. I can now rewrite this right here. I can rewrite this with this knowledge of what x is. So it's going to be cos of 2 pi minus theta equals cos of theta. Now, do we know what theta is going to be? Well, we do. This rule is just rewriting this. So theta is obviously pi on 6. So I can now rewrite this. So this is going to be cos of pi on 6, because theta is pi on 6. And here's another pi on 6. Here's another theta, so I can put pi on 6 here. So it's going to be cos of 2 pi minus pi on 6. If I now simplify this, I will get my answer. So what will that be? Well, in order to subtract something like this, I need my denominators to be the same. So I'm going to change that 2 pi into 12 pi over 6 minus pi over 6, which is going to be equal to cos of pi over 6. 12 pi over 6 minus pi on 6, well, I'm just subtracting my numerators, is going to give me cos of 11 pi over 6, which is going to be equal to cos of pi on 6. So that means, if I was to come here, this right here is going to be my x value. Cos of 11 pi on 6 is going to equal to cos of pi on 6. So I could come here, I could say, therefore, x is going to be equal to, that's an ugly x, let me try again. X, that's a beautiful x, is 11 pi on 6. That is your answer. Actually, let me do it in yellow. All right. Before we move on, I just want to make sure that everyone understands what we've done here. What have we done? What does this even mean? Well, let us come over here and draw in some lines. Let me begin by putting in pi on 6. We know that pi on 6 is here to here, which means I come here, here. this angle right here, the one I'm drawing in, that angle is pi on 6, that angle. I can't draw it in, it's too small. So that means this value right here, my exact values, which correspond to pi on 6, hopefully we've all memorized the first quadrant of our unit circle, is going to be the square root of 3/2.5. So if I'm looking for cos of pi on 6, I know that cos is my x values, so it's going to be my x value. So cos of pi on 6 is going to be equal to the square root of 3 on 2. So let me come over here and say that this would be this. Next, let me say, well, what is cos of 11 pi on 6? Well, we know that 11 pi on 6, if this is our reference angle, we're just going to our fourth quadrant. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to grab that. I'm going to come here. It's just going to be down. Whoa, I thought I was something else. It's just going to be down here. And it's now going to be, let me do it in green. It's just going to be that angle. So that's going to be 11 pi on 6. It's going to take me down here. What are my exact values for this point? Well, it's going to be the square root of 3 on 2 and negative 1/2. So cos of 11 pi on 6, there's 11 pi on 6. Cos is my x values, so it's going to be this. Cos of 11 pi on 6 is the square root of 3 on 2. So I come over here and I'm going to write that this is the square root of 3 on 2. And hey presto, look, the square root of 3 on 2 equals the square root of 3 on 2. That's a true statement, which means that x is equal to 11 pi on 6. Hopefully this enables you to understand what we're doing when answering these types of questions. Hopefully you got that correct. Could you now give this question a go? This question is kind of hairy. Good luck.